Welcome, everybody, to the Investors Podcast 2.0 Wealth Mindset, where we dive into the minds of the successful real estate entrepreneur to uncover the tips and tricks that have allowed them to keep moving forward. I am your host, Scott Bauer, and I'm excited that you're here with us. Welcome back, everybody. It is yet another episode of the Investors Podcast, and of course, I am your host, Scott Bauer. I'm excited today. We got a ton of value to bring to you today. We got somebody that's done over 2,000 transactions, somebody that's been featured on popular outlets like NBC, Fox, CBS. He's been on Sirius Radio, ABC. He is a real estate investor, a philanthropist. He helps other people learn the power of real estate to, become financially free and just enjoy the great life that we get to live. So I'm excited to have Mike Wolf with us on the show today. Mike, how are you, man?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks so much for having me. Good to be here, buddy.
I'm really excited to chat with you about this. Why don't you go ahead and give the listeners a little bit more kind of about your background, more than what I've already said, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, basically, I've been investing in real estate for 31 years now and got into it totally by mistake. So if we go way back in time to the middle of grade 12, had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. And my parents always kind of drove, they were always driving into my head, doctor, lawyer, doctor, lawyer, doctor, lawyer. And so I was terrified of blood, so doctor was off the table. And so by default, I decided I was going to go and get my law degree. Anyway, to make a long story short, got my first degree. With that came a whole bunch of student loans. And I decided before I go and get more in debt, I want to go pay this off. And once going to make a long story short, got a job at the phone company. While I was there, I bought my first property to live in. And then my mortgage broker called me up not long after and goes, Mike, you're making good money. And if you want, I can get you another mortgage to buy another property. And I go, why do I want another property? And he goes, well, you buy the property, you put a tenant in there, and they'll pay your mortgage down for you. And 25 years from now, that's your retirement. I go, that kind of makes sense. So back then I knew nothing about real estate, didn't have any passion for real estate, wasn't even on my radar, but bought my first rental property. And a couple of years after I bought it, the market took off. And all of a sudden I was sitting on this equity. I was still working at the phone company. I was sitting on all this equity that I never thought in a million years I would ever see. I was in my mid-20s back then. And the rest is history. I was hooked. That was the first time in my life where I really knew what I wanted to do. I wasn't living my parents' dream for me. So I promptly quit my job at the phone company, which I don't recommend, by the way. After your first success, don't quit your job. I didn't realize, now I can't qualify for mortgages anymore. So anyway, quit my job, told my parents that, I'm not going to law school anymore. That's not my dream. That's your dream.
Right.
And then proceeded to lose most of what I made on the next deal because I had no idea what I was doing. And but I already burnt the bridge at the phone company. And my parents were always telling me, well, why don't you get your next degree? Then you have something to fall back on. And being in my mid-20s, I couldn't go back to my parents and tell them they were right. And so I had to figure this out. And so here we are 31 years later, definitely some ups and downs, but now my teams and I have done thousands of transactions all over North America. And I also teach other people how to do this stuff as well.
Well, that's some good, backstory to get started. I mean, if you started, 30 years ago, that means you're starting in the 90s. And of course, we know that we've had lots of ups and downs since then, which I think we'll get into that. I think where I want to start, and maybe you have some insight on this, is, you said that you wanted to go and become a lawyer or a doctor, both two very high-paying W-2 type jobs, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing I heard, because a lot of people have this misunderstanding that, if I just, go become one of these high-paid employees, that's going to solve all my problems. And the reality is that, yes, they're paid a lot of money, which means they can pay a lot of tax and still be good. But this real estate investment game that we get to play is so exciting because of the tax benefits that you can get out of it. Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And, back then I wasn't thinking that. That wasn't why I got into it. That's definitely some of the benefit. Ironically, over the years, I had one of the lawyers I used to send a lot of deals to. I'd be at his office constantly picking up my paychecks. He goes, Mike, I went to school all these years to become a lawyer. You're making way more money than me, because he saw all the checks going through. I eventually trained him to be a real estate investor, and he quit law. So there's a little bit of irony in that. But I've met lots of, and by the way, for anybody who's a doctor, lawyer, that's absolutely could be your passion. You might love it or not. There's nothing wrong with that.
Amen.
But for me, anybody who knows me, first of all, Like I'm the most non-argumentative person ever, and I don't like negativity. So I would have been a horrible lawyer. But anyway, yeah, I mean, playing in the real estate game, I think no matter how you're making your money, if you are a doctor, lawyer, and you're not taking some of your money and investing in real estate, one, you're paying way too much in tax for sure. Because the richest people on the planet, if you look at Warren Buffett, for example, he's not known as a real estate guy, but he owns tons of real estate, so he can bring down his taxable income. And he pays less tax than most middle-class people by far, and he'll openly admit that. So, that's not why I got into it, but it's certainly one of the big benefits is the being able to bring down your taxable income. And on top of it, when you're doing your own, being an entrepreneur, not being stuck to an office, there's just so many benefits. And for me, for my type of lifestyle and type of person that I am, and I can tell you're probably much the same. Like I can't, well, the thing I learned at the phone company is I'm not cut out for the corporate world, that's for sure. And even if I was my own boss, being a lawyer, you're not really your own boss. There's a very high suicide rate amongst, lawyers, for example. So anyway, I feel like for whatever reason, I ended up on the right path for me and haven't looked back. And there were it wasn't all ups. I definitely had some downs too, but I persevered because I had a passion for it.
Well, and that's good. Probably an odd way to start a conversation, right? And yeah, I mean, you made a good point. If you are in a place where you're, high paying, doctor, lawyer, because there certainly are people like that listen to the podcast. And by no means am I saying that's a bad thing, because it certainly is. To your point, you should be leveraging real estate to get down that taxable income so you're paying less in taxes. But we'll move on from that.
If you don't mind me, I just want to get one more thing in there. And the other thing is, if you're not buying, for example, if you're a high paid lawyer, doctor, and you don't own, some rental properties where you've got some passive income coming in, if you ever get sick and you stop showing up at the office, your money's going to stop coming in. Yeah. And if you can, invest strategically in real estate and have, the right teams to go collect your rent for you, you can create passive income and, have money, obviously during COVID, we saw a lot of businesses shut down, and somebody like myself, my people are still paying rent. That doesn't stop. And even, we've been doing this a long time. 9/11, when the stock market shut down, my rent checks came in just like they always did at the end of 9/11. So you need to create consistent passive income. And if you don't, like I said, one bad thing happens and you stop showing up at work or things get locked down, you're in trouble.
Absolutely, you are. You absolutely are. That's for sure. Let me go back and ask, because you've been doing it during this 30-year stint, what was the first time where you really saw a big challenge? The first time that, let's see, the 90s, if you just say hypothetically started in 1990, then we had coming up on the 2000s, so we had the internet boom, right? When was it the first time where you had a challenge in real estate? What happened? I know maybe at the beginning of your career, end of the 80s, 90s, there were really high interest rates on retail stuff to go get a loan and a mortgage. But, what was the first challenge that you really had to overcome to get through a barrier to really, continue with your real estate business?
Yeah, well, my challenge started extremely early on. My first deal, you got to remember, my first deal was meant to be my retirement. I got into it for a long term. It was not, at that point, I had no idea that real estate was going to become my career. It was just kind of my side little thing. I'm buying this for my retirement. I'm going to keep working at the phone company, pay off my student loans, and then go back to law school. That was what was in the cards for me, at least at that point. Then when the market took off, all of a sudden it's like, man, I was looking at this equity and I'm thinking, man, I've got, in the last 2 years at the phone company, I made this much. And in real estate, I made this much, and I don't even know what I'm doing. So what would happen if I actually took the time to learn this? But the biggest challenge I had was after I did the first deal, as I mentioned, I quit my job. And so I couldn't get a mortgage anymore. Luckily, I had a pretty good chunk of equity. But my biggest problem was all up here. My biggest problem was my mindset, because being in my mid-20s back then, I thought when you get that success early on, that's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, I had some equity, I had some cash to play with. That was the bonus. But the other side of the equation, I didn't have any knowledge. I didn't know how to, my due diligence on my very first deal, I didn't know what to look for. So I just thought, well, if I'm going to have a rental property, I'll just get something that looks pretty and is close to home, so it's easy to collect rent. That was my due diligence. And don't do that for due diligence, by the way. That's not what you should do. But But when you have that success and all of a sudden, being a mid-20s guy and my ego got the best of me and I thought I knew everything there was to know about real estate, and then just going and quitting my job, very, very quickly, telling my parents, screw that, I'm not going to law school, and burning all the bridges. I don't do that. But the biggest problem I had was that now I was becoming a know-it-all, and I was very cocky and arrogant. And I thought I didn't need anybody's help. And so the next property that I bought, once again, I didn't really know what I was doing, except the one thing I did know is that I didn't want to wait. That the first success happened after 2.5 years. And I didn't want to wait 2.5 years till my next paycheck. And I knew there were people out there flipping homes and getting quick paychecks. I thought, oh, how hard could that be? And so I just kind of winged it. And I managed to lose most of my money on the next deal. So the one thing that, so after that big loss, it was actually the best thing that ever happened to me, because I got very humble and I got in the mode where, okay, I don't know everything there is to know about real estate, and I've got to go get help. Otherwise, I've got to tell my parents that they were right and I'm wrong, and I didn't want to do that. And so I basically found somebody else who was successful in the market I was in, and just said, listen, I've got enough money to do another deal. Can we do a joint venture together? I'll put up most of the cash, but if you teach me as we go, I'll give you a bigger percentage of the return. I just want to learn how to do this properly. And had I not done that, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. I might be giving you legal advice, but we wouldn't be having a real estate conversation. And so my biggest challenge was just my arrogance and my ego. And so I needed a really big humbling lesson, which I got. And luckily I got it pretty early on. And I think the only reason that I got back up after that big loss is because I didn't want to tell my parents they were right. So I actually owe it to my parents that I'm still in real estate.
So you had a really strong why behind that, which is great. But, you mentioned how you kind of quit your job right away and you went all in, right? And you probably wouldn't recommend that to a lot of people. However, when I look at it, I say, if it's feasible for you, right? If you have an opportunity to burn the boats with what you're doing and go all in on something that that's how you really become successful. Because ultimately, if you just tip your toe in the water all the time and you don't fully commit to something, then you're not going to get the best outcome out of whatever that is that you're doing, right? And so I agree with you inside.
Well, I definitely agree, and that's actually some of the stuff that I teach is when, and I work with a lot of not just real estate investors, but entrepreneurs, and quite often they're afraid to take that leap. Eventually, you have to take that leap. However, the one thing I'll say about when you're first starting off in real estate, if you have the ability to qualify for a mortgage, that's going to make your life a lot easier. So I'm not saying go fully committed, but also know that before you quit your job, borrow as much money as you can. Get lines of credit, get credit cards, anything that you, once you take that jump out of the corporate world into the real estate investing world, all that stuff gets a lot harder to find. And so over time, I learned about, raising private money, and I learned other strategies and, vendor financing. I learned some of those things, but early on I had no clue. I was just winging it and just going out on the ledge and just, taking my chances. It worked out pretty good, but I think if I were to go back in time, I would have got a few more mortgages. Maybe I would have gone and worked less hours. But I definitely would have kept the ability to qualify for financing. That would have been helpful at that point.
It really does make a big difference. And so I'll agree with you on that. And another thing that I really like that you did is you went and so you realized, I guess, that you didn't know everything, right? And you wanted to learn. And so you searched for a mentor. You searched for a JV partner that had more experience than you, which I think is a phenomenal thing that, the listeners need to hear if they're in a similar situation, right? Because although it sounds like in that scenario, you had to give up a little bit of the meat on the bone to the JV partner that you got. How was that experience with, allowing you to jump leaps and bounds in your real estate career and make sure you don't make those mistakes again?
Yeah, well, that's another thing. If I go back in time, I would have just got a mentor from day one. And like I said, I never really expected to be a real estate investor. It was never on my radar. It was never my passion. It didn't become a passion until I got that first paycheck. Then all of a sudden, it's like, man, I like this business. This is great. And so, but like I said, my ego got the best of me. When I actually got that humbling lesson and I started to work with somebody else who paved the path before me, once you learn something once, you don't unlearn it. So I had to give up. I had to pay something for that mentorship. It cost me something, and it was worth every penny because I look at how much I've made since then by doing things properly. And it's paid for itself, thousands and thousands of times over. And had I not got that training, there's no way I would have succeeded. I would have probably made one, my next deal, if it would have been a mistake, I would have been wiped out. And then I would have, probably gone back to the phone company, wagging my tail between my legs, looking for my job back. And and then eventually going back to living my parents' dream for me. So, yeah. But yeah, I would get a mentor as early on as you possibly can.
And you absolutely should, right? You absolutely should. Now, let me ask you this. I mean, where are you focused at? Are you in the residential side? Do you go in commercial? Do you dip your hand in a little bit of all of it? I mean, how is it, and do you have a large team that is supported by you, or are you pretty specific about what it is that you go after and have a small group of people to allow you to do that?
Yeah. So basically I've got personally, I've got three different, main revenue streams. The first one is my rental properties. I've been collecting them for quite some time, and I live off that passive income. And normally, when there's no COVID, I'm normally traveling full time. COVID put a little bit of a monkey wrench in that. So, but that happens, that money shows up in my bank account every month without me doing anything. I've got a team that goes and deals with the tenants. None of the tenants have my phone number. I don't deal with any of that stuff anymore. So that's one revenue stream. The second one is I have a turnkey operation in Atlanta, where we go buy homes in bulk from the banks. We inspect them, fix them, put tenants in place. My property management team looks after these homes, and we sell these to investors all over the world. A lot of them being doctors, lawyers, engineers, professionals that don't want to learn how to do real estate themselves, but they want the benefits of owning real estate. And then the third revenue stream, which pre-COVID I wasn't doing that much of, is training. I used to do 1 or 2 live events a year, and I teach people, for example, how to do tax deeds in Houston, Texas, which is my favorite place to do that strategy. Where I taught a number of different strategies, but I'd only do, I teach for 3 or 4 days. I'd hop on a plane, go somewhere tropical, and relax. And then when COVID hit, it obviously put me back at home with a lot more spare time, because I'm not, running through airports and living my usual lifestyle. And for the first couple of weeks, I was actually like sleeping in and being super lazy, and like everybody else watching Netflix. And I think I ran out of things to watch on Netflix. And then I started to get calls coming in from people with podcasts and summits and online events. Everybody wanted to know, hey, what's going on with real estate? And not only that, as they closed the global economy, it's got me thinking back to 2007, when, a whole bunch of people were losing their jobs and losing their homes. And back then I started up a company called Foreclosure Fixers. And I would actually try to help people stay in their home. I'd help them to not lose their home to the bank. And when I heard about the global economy shutting down, I go, oh man, here we go again. And I was thinking, I'm going to set up my Foreclosure Fixers business again and see if we can help, some families not, either not lose their home, or at least, not end up on the streets, not be homeless, give them what I call a soft landing. So my focus has changed a little bit as a result. And so I've been doing, trainings this year online, but a lot more of them because I have a lot more bandwidth than I normally do. And so, but yeah, in terms of, I've done tons of single families. I've done some, some multis, some small multis, some big multis. I haven't really delved that much into commercial over the years. Not really my thing. And right now I'm very glad, because commercials, obviously a lot of it's very tough right now, especially retail and office space. That stuff is, they're definitely struggling in there. But yeah, I mean, I've tried pretty much every strategy. I teach a lot of different strategies, but right now my main focus, as COVID keeps unfolding, is I want to help as many people as possible. So I've been doing trainings, teaching other people how to invest ethically, how to help these people in trouble, and also how to monetize it. And so, so my focus keeps changing based on what's going on in the marketplace.
Well, that's what you have to do. I mean, that's what you have to do. You have to stay fluid and making sure that you're available to change appropriately to what's going on in the marketplace. I think that's a very valuable tool. We might as well talk about kind of where the state of the market is, what you feel like is going to happen to real estate. COVID has changed a lot of things for a lot of people. I think that there are still laws in effect that are pausing or have delayed the effects of what COVID is really going to have in the real estate market. So I'm gonna get your idea. I know a lot of the listeners out there are wondering the same thing. What do you feel like is going to happen, and when do you think that's going to happen?
Yeah, well, right now we're in a very interesting time because there's a big shortage of properties on the market, and a whole bunch of people for whatever reason buying, which wouldn't be what I would do right now, but there's a lot of people doing that. And so right now we have a a real shortage of properties, and prices are going up in a lot of markets.
Where are you at?
Well, right now I'm actually back in Canada. I don't, all my investing's in the US, but I'm actually hanging out in Canada right now, which is where I'm from. This is where my kids and my daughter and my grandkids are. So, but all my real estate is, Atlanta is my favorite market. I do a lot of stuff in Texas. But what we're likely to see is, one, we're going to see a lot of people leaving, expensive places, going to places where there's jobs and lower cost of living. So right now, I was actually just ironically on a call with somebody, a friend of mine in Los Angeles, who was asking for advice because they're actually moving to Idaho, which seems to be a very popular thing. I would have never, in 31 years doing real estate, Idaho never came up in conversation. Real estate and Idaho never came up in the same sentence before. Yep. And nothing against Idaho, but in the last couple of months, Californians are moving there in droves for whatever reason. And so, but we're going to see a lot of people leaving, places like Manhattan. We're seeing people, imagine you wake up in your one-bedroom apartment that you're paying $4,000 or $5,000 a month to live in, and you've got no job. That's just not a sustainable lifestyle. So people are going to go where there's jobs being created. They're going to go where the cost of living is lower, where they can get ahead. And that's going to be a big trend. Within the big cities, though, we're going to also see a lot of people that never thought they could work from home, and a lot of businesses that never thought their employees could work from home are realizing, hey, we can save a lot of money on this commercial, on these buildings that we've got, this office space, by letting our, people work over Zoom. And so we're seeing a lot of people now leaving the city centers because they don't have to drive back and forth to, an office. They're going out to the burbs where they get a lot more value for their money. But I think that the big picture, there's going to be some really big opportunities coming down the pipeline. One of them, right now, there's, for the most part, a moratorium on foreclosures, which obviously is a good thing. I'd hate to see a whole bunch of people losing their homes in the middle of a pandemic and being out on the streets. I can't think of a worse scenario than that. But that's not going to last forever. It's a temporary thing. And so what we're going to see is a lot of people, unfortunately, running into trouble. So pre-foreclosures are going to be huge. If for anybody, and that's why I was thinking of setting up my foreclosure fixers. That's when you go and talk to the people before they lose their home. But of course, we're not going to be able to help everybody. There's going to be a lot of homes that will go up for foreclosure. One of the best places, by the way, to deal with, if you want to get foreclosures, Houston, Texas there's auctions that take place every month. Normally on the first Tuesday, they've been closed down now for 6-7 months. But when they reopen, there's a big backlog, and they have both bank foreclosures and something called tax deeds. And for those of you who don't know what that is, when people haven't paid their property taxes in 3 or 4 years, eventually the county will put these homes up on the auction block. They need that money for their hospitals, their schools, police department, etc. And I had one of my students pick up a single family home not too long before the auction shut down. He got it for $7,200, a home that was worth probably $90,000 to $100,000. And so those auctions normally, hundreds, if not thousands of homes change hands every month. And so if you look at the fact that it's been closed for 6 months, there's thousands of properties that would have changed hands that didn't. So you have that big, surplus. And then on top of it, all these people that would have been foreclosed on that didn't. And so there's going to be a lot of opportunity there. So one of the strategies that I would, that I'm teaching my students right now is, every month at the Houston auction, for example, 3 weeks before the auction, there's a list that's published of all the homes that are going up for auction. And so if you take that list and you reach out, you try to get a hold of these people before they lose their homes, that there's great opportunity to create a win-win. And once again, try to help stop the foreclosure, or buy their home off them, but put them in a better spot than how you found them. A lot of opportunity there. Then if you can't help them there, then you go to the auction. Like I said, it's going to be a massive amount of inventory. And so there's a lot of great opportunity for people that are prepared, and they kind of can see the trends of what's happening. And so it's just for me, the other big trend is a lot of people, unfortunately, when they lose their homes, just like in 2007, we're going to have people going from home ownership to renting. And if you get in the right markets where a whole bunch of renters are going to go, which is where the jobs are, you're going to see that rents are going to go up, and so are the property values in those markets. So these are some of the things you want to definitely keep an eye on.
Absolutely. No, and I can agree with that there is certainly opportunity coming. One of the things that, I want to point out, though, that's kind of unique, that's different from 2007 for all the listeners, is that now people have a lot of equity in these properties. You know, they, over the last, 5 years, 10 years, they bought it, and in that time it has appreciated considerably. And so there's a lot of equity that's sitting in these properties. I don't know if foreclosures are going to happen the same way that they happened before. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure they're not. And this is why. It's because, because of all this equity, they'd rather short sale it. They'd rather, they'd rather do a loan modification or something with that borrower to make sure they could, pay for longer. They would tack the payments onto a later time or change, do a loan mod. And I think that that's going to be so prevalent because of so many people that are out there that have this issue. Now, I'm not saying that there's not going to be some foreclosures, because there absolutely will. And that it may not be in the form of an actual foreclosure, but just the same type of a program is going to happen, right? The same thing goes with, renters out there that haven't been paying their rents because there's a moratorium on evictions. At least, I'm not sure if it's nationwide or what, but here in Arizona, there is. And if your tenants aren't paying, unfortunately, there's not much you can do about it, right? But eventually, when this passes, when this changes, and all of a sudden now that moratorium's lifted, though a lot of those landlords, especially if they're out of state or maybe they just have a lot of rentals that haven't been paid for a long time, they don't want those tenants in there. They might not want to deal with tenants at all. So now they have a bad taste in their mouth. There's an opportunity there, right?
That's going to be a huge opportunity, actually, is people that have rental properties that didn't have really good policies in place to deal with this. And I've had rental properties for a long, long time now. We have policies in place long before COVID to deal with this. And so we've got probably around a 95%, and this is over, in Atlanta, for example, we've sold around 1,100 properties in the last 8 years. And we're collecting around 95% of the rent right now. And that's because of some of the policies that we put in place. But there's a lot of people that are not in that boat and they're not getting any rent. And one of the places where you're going to find some opportunity is buying properties off of, these investors that are, bleeding lots and lots of money right now. And also, Airbnb owners, for example, that they went without a lot of cash flow for quite some time too. So there's gonna be a lot of different places to get opportunities. And even whether people lose their home to foreclosure or whether they're just in a really bad spot and they need to bail out of their property, it's definitely going to be a lot of opportunity for people that are prepared for this great transfer of wealth that's about to happen.
Absolutely. And it's also a great transfer of where people are living. Like you mentioned, some of the larger metropolitan areas, whether that is in New York or that's in California or Portland, Oregon or Chicago, Illinois, or wherever these large places are that are still shut down, that continue to have shutdowns, continue to have restrictions on what people can do, are limiting people from going places, doing their day-to-day business, day-to-day opportunities or whatever they're doing every day, causing businesses to shut down. This is going to force people out of those areas and into new areas like Phoenix, Arizona, like, where did you just say? People are going to Idaho, like, places where there's not as many restrictions, right?
Absolutely.
And so this is going to create a lot of opportunities. We're going to see the world kind of move around a little bit, which I'm excited to see how that's going to look. I try to do my best to make predictions and to, be educated on where people are going and where things are going and to be in a good spot. And I think for the listeners out there listening to this right now, they should also, keep their eye on that. Where are things moving to and how can they be fluid and be able to move and maneuver within that so they can profit from it, or at least, add value to the marketplace.
Absolutely right. Yeah, and it is all about looking at the trends and where are people going to? Where if they're leaving, California, where are they going to go to? And Phoenix is going to be the recipient of a lot of people. Idaho, Vegas, Texas. A lot of times people want the exact opposite of whatever's bothering them. They're going to look for the extreme opposite. So California, a lot of people are just fed up with the taxes there, and so they're going to, they like Texas because there's no state income tax. And so, but if you keep an eye on the trends and see where people are going and get there before they get there, there's a lot of money in that.
Absolutely, there is. And you know what? I think that's a kind of a good transition into, we'll talk about a very important trend that's going on right now. It's October 28th. We are shortly before a new presidential election. I think a lot of the listeners listening to this, everybody's kind of concerned or kind of eager, apprehensive to see what the effect of this next election is going to be. This is the first time that I've seen where the presidential election really has a major impact, a bigger impact than I feel it has in the past. And so, no matter which way you swing, that's not really the point. What do you think the effect is, whether it stays with the current administration or if we have a change in administration? I mean, do you think that's going to open up more opportunities, or do you think that is going to close down and shut down opportunities? I mean, where do you feel on that?
Yeah, well, here's the thing: is I've been doing this for a long, long time, and I've been through many different, political parties being in office. And I can just tell you, I just go and I do my business every day. I don't pay attention to all the news and all the stuff going on in the background. It's very easy to have all that static going on and kind of stop you in your tracks. And I just go and do my thing. And, if somebody comes in and they get rid of the 1031 exchange, I can't control that, but I'll just go make more money. And, if something, let's say the 1031 exchange gets eliminated, well, then there's going to be more people, for example, willing to do vendor financing because they don't want to get the tax hit. So with everything that's got a negative to it, there's also a positive side to it. And so just go out there and keep doing business. You can't control who's going to be in there. So if you're sitting there glued to the TV all day and letting the negativity get into your mind, it's going to stop you. It's going to slow you down. If you just get out there and just do your thing, and the tax laws change, well, your accountant can figure that out. But with every negative, there's a positive. And so I don't pay. I'm actually lucky because I'm Canadian, so I don't have to deal with your politics, although ours aren't any better. But even if I did, to be honest, like I said, I've been doing this through many, many different politicians and eras and different things that have come into play. The one thing that I do know is people are always going to need a place to live no matter who's in power. So either people are going to be buying, in which case I want to be selling to them, or they're going to be renting, in which case I want to be renting to them. And as long as you just keep doing your thing every day and not trying to control the uncontrollable, then, if you have to pay a little bit more tax, so be it. I'd rather go make lots of money and have to pay tax than not be making any money and not pay tax. So those are really our choices.
Mike, I think that could have been the best answer you could have given for the listeners out there that are listening to this right now. And you're exactly right. There's so much negativity and noise out there in the marketplace right now across the board, no matter which way you swing, whatever, doesn't matter. It's wild. And so, you got to say, okay, I'm focused, put the blinders on, right? And just do what you do. And as a real estate investor, you're right. I mean, in the retail or residential space, people need a place to live. That's it. That's a very simple concept.
And the other thing is you can't control the U.S. economy. You can't control the global economy, but you can control your own economy. So I say focus on your own stuff. Be a leader in your own household for yourself and your family. And you can't change what's going on out there. So just do the best you can within what you've got. And there's never been a day in the last 31 years that I woke up and said, oh, there's nothing I can do today. This new politician got in. I guess I better look for a job for the next 4 years. Not once has that ever crossed my mind. So just ignore it and do the best you can. And there's always opportunity out there. So just take advantage of it.
Love that, man. Love that. That's a great end to it. I appreciate you sharing kind of your journey, a little bit of what you've done. You've invested for a long time. You've got a lot of wisdom that you can bring to the table. Are you ready for a lightning round, or do you have anything last remarks you want to kind of give to our listeners to, point them forward, or we'll get them moving?
Yeah, well, I actually wrote an ebook that talks exactly about what opportunities are coming up right now, what you can be, even if you're locked down, which I hope nobody is anymore, but even if you're locked down, stuff you can do from your computer, even if you have very little money. When I started, I had no money. Stuff you can do with no money, bad credit. I basically just have all the different strategies that I recommend for right now. So I'm happy to give the listeners a copy of that.
Absolutely.
And, I'm not sure if you want me to, I have an event coming up. I'm not sure if you want me to promote that, but okay. It's 3 days. It's November 20th to 22nd. So I'm not sure if this will be released before then.
It will.
Oh, good. Okay. So it's November 20th to 22nd. I'll give you a link that you can put in there for people to sign up. But I'm going to basically take the strategies in the ebook, and we're going to spend 3 days going into how you do each of those strategies, the best ways to attract, motivated sellers, the best ways to, do deals, like I said, even if you have not a lot of cash to deal with, and also how to ethically create win-wins, for other, there's going to be so many people struggling losing their jobs, and so many people are just in a bad spot. So how do you give them, put them in a better position and get paid for it? And that's what we're going to talk about for 3 days. So, I made it very, very inexpensive because, like I mentioned, I was thinking of starting my foreclosure fixers again. And I thought, well, how do I scale that? I might be able to help 50, maybe 100 families if I'm really lucky this year. But what if I taught a whole bunch of other people how to do that? And so I made it $97 for 3 days. So I'm giving you all my best knowledge. You can ask me all the questions you want, and $97 for 3 days. And if you don't think it was worth your while, I will refund your money. I'll double your money back. How does that sound? So
I like that. I like that for sure. Well, we'll make sure to add that in the show notes. So all you listeners that have stuck with us, obviously to this point, it means you love the show. I'm sure you want to come. You also have a link where somebody can get that ebook so they can make sure to get prepared before they go to your live event.
Yeah, so if you go to my main website, which is MikeWolfMastery.com, Wolf just like the animal, MikeWolfMastery.com, and as soon as you go on there, a little pop-up will show up saying, hey, do you want my free ebook? And help yourself.
Right there. All right, well, we'll make sure to add that in the show notes for all the listeners to make sure to go there and be able to get that free ebook, and ultimately the link that you're going to send us so that they can sign up and go to your live event. But before we do that, I want to talk about a lightning round for you. Some quick questions to ask you to get our listeners moving forward. Are you ready for that?
Let's do it. Sounds like fun.
Let's do it. All right. So the first question is pretty simple. How does your mindset have to change to flex and to adapt and be fluid in this ever-changing environment? What do you think your mindset has to do?
I think the biggest thing is once again, just really staying away from that negativity. It's so easy to get overwhelmed. And I know so many people that are usually really, really strong. They're going through a lot of tough times right now because it's almost impossible to ignore what's going on. So I just think staying positive. And I'd say the other thing is, keep educating yourself. The fact that they're listening to your podcast right now means that they're not doing what I did when I first got back and sleeping in and watching Netflix all day. You're taking the time to educate yourself. So right now, more than ever, this is a time, use this extra time that COVID has created for us to just keep educating yourself and keep learning and keep pushing forward.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Well, that's a good segue into our next question here. I mean, what are you reading?
Right now I don't, trying to think what I've got on the go. The last book that I finished was one called Abundance. The Future is Better Than You Think by a guy named Peter Diamandis. So it's like the word diamond with IS on the end. And it's for those of you who are feeling really down right now and feeling very, maybe not very optimistic. This book talks about what's coming down the pipeline. The guy who wrote it is just a genius.
He really is.
So strongly recommend that book.
He really is. As a matter of fact, Peter Diamandis, he's a fellow philosopher. He's somebody, he works very closely with Tony Robbins. I know I've seen him speak at different events where Tony speaks as well. You're right. Phenomenal book. Actually, I've heard about that. I've never read it, but it's going to go on my docket of stuff to read.
He's got a second one called Bold, which I also recommend.
What is it called?
It's called Bold. Is his second.
Okay. Well, that leads us into our third question here. What are you trying to learn?
Right now, one of the things that I've been learning for quite a while is marketing. And I have teams that do my marketing for me, but I always love to learn. And even though I'm not going to be the one turning all the dials and trying to figure out how to, I just love to learn because a lot of it's psychology. It's how do you positively influence and ethically influence other people? And so I love to learn that stuff because I really want to help as many people as possible during these times, and you want to get your message out there in a bigger way. So I've been studying a lot of that, and that's actually one of my biggest passions. Even though I never want to be a marketer per se, I always love to understand the psychology behind it.
Yeah, that's huge, man. That's definitely big. And I mean, do you have a superpower that you like to really, if I had to ask you what your superpower is, what is it?
My superpower is really, I'm a really good connector. I know a lot of people. I've done tons of networking for many, many years. I've been fortunate enough to hang out with some pretty big players, not just in the real estate industry, but in, personal development and all kinds of different, different modalities. And a lot of times I'll meet somebody and say, oh, you need to talk to this person. Oh, you need to talk to that person. So I think my superpower is just connecting people. Because a lot of times, that's all it takes. Is that one connection can change everything. And I love to be the connector for that.
That's a powerful thing, man. Really. I mean, it really is. If you think about, all the listeners that are listening to this right now, if you think of who connected you to listen to this podcast, who connected you to to get into the business that you're in, or who connected you with your spouse or with your, there's connections are one of the most important things and a beautiful thing about being human, right? So that's that's a huge one. Thank you for sharing that. And finally, I mean, where can the listeners find you if they want to get more in touch with you and, get more involved with you, if they want some one-on-one coaching, if they want to attend your live event? Of course, we're going to add the link in the show notes here. But where else can they find you?
Yeah, I think the best bet, just email me, info@mikewolfmastery.com. And I reply to every email. So
Perfect. We'll make sure to add that in the show notes as well. And all the listeners that have stuck with us, of course, make sure you like it, you subscribe it, and make sure you share it, right? Because if you got a lot of value out of this podcast, that means somebody else will too, and maybe they won't unless you connect them to it. So with that being said, Mike, thanks a lot for being here. Appreciate you being
thanks
here.
for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
It's been a lot of fun. We'll talk to you real soon.
Sounds good, buddy.